Okay, so imagine like modern politicians living their lives as publicly as, like celebrities.
Yeah.
We're talking like every romantic entanglement, every like little indiscretion
Oh, yeah.
plastered all over the tabloids. That was Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
That was ancient Rome.
It was, and it's fascinating because, with Caesar, his personal life wasn't just tabloid fodder.
Right.
It was very much connected to his political maneuvering.
Totally.
Yeah.
Our listeners wanted us to really do a deep dive into Caesar, like the man behind the myth.
Yeah.
And we found just a treasure trove of information in the Betwixt the Sheets podcast. Have you heard of that one?
I have. Yeah, yeah. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Historian Emma Southern, she really goes in depth on Caesar's love life.
Mm-hmm.
She uses all these amazing sources like letters and biographies, even poems from back then.
It's really amazing the kind of stuff that survived.
Yeah. And they paint this picture of a man whose reputation for, shall we say, romantic adventures was kind of notorious. Even his own troops knew about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most fascinating things is that it was so well known, even acknowledged by his own troops.
Oh, totally. Like imagine your soldiers singing about your affairs during a victory parade.
Exactly.
It just makes you think about how different public image was in Roman society, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally different.
So was Caesar like just this charming rogue? Or was he actually like deliberately using his personal life to kind of further his political ambitions?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And I think Southern, she makes a good point that, while some sources might have, maybe exaggerated things a bit, especially ones from like his rivals, like Cicero.
Oh, of course.
I mean, they had their own motives.
Sure.
But even then, like Caesar's reputation as a lover was just so widely accepted.
It's interesting because, like you said, even his own troops seem to like joke about it, to his face. It's almost like you can't separate fact from fiction.
Yeah,
it's so intertwined.
And that kind of leads into, another really interesting aspect of his life, his relationships with the wives of powerful men in Rome.
Oh, yeah.
He was known to have had affairs with a lot of them.
I mean, famously, like the wife of his rival Pompey.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like, juicy gossip, right? Like these relationships, I mean, they could have had real political consequences.
Oh, absolutely. It really raises questions about whether these affairs were just purely about, passion, or if it was more of a calculated strategy, to gather information, maybe undermine his rivals.
Oh, wow.
Or even just like, flaunt his power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely adds a whole other layer to Roman politics, doesn't it? It's like so much more complicated than just, the battles and the Senate speeches and,
Yeah.
But I want to talk about like the women in Caesar's life. Like he was married 3 times, right?
It was, yeah.
Cornelia, Pompeia, and Calpurnia.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about them?
Well, it's unfortunately the historical sources are, primarily from a male perspective, so we just get glimpses into their lives.
Right.
But their own feelings and motivations, I mean, those remain kind of a mystery to us.
Yeah, that's so often the case.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
With women in history, you know, their stories are just kind of overshadowed by the men around them.
Sadly, yeah.
But we know that each of these marriages, they did play a part in Caesar's rise to power.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Southern. And she points out that each of his wives, they came from these prominent families.
Mm-hmm.
So that they provided him with like really valuable connections and political support.
For sure. And it really shows that, even in his personal life, Caesar, I think, always had an eye on how his actions could, benefit his political ambitions.
Yeah, like even his choice of wife was like a strategic maneuver almost.
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
But of course, with Caesar there was always drama.
Of course.
And his marriage to Pompeia, that ended in a very public scandal involving this religious festival called the Bona Dea.
Ah, yes, the Bona Dea incident.
Right.
Now, for listeners who might need a little refresher on Roman religious practices, what was that all about?
Sure. So the Bona Dea, it was this sacred event, held every December.
Okay.
And it was a women-only celebration focused on fertility and chastity.
Okay, so like Strictly no men allowed.
Exactly. Yeah. Men were absolutely forbidden from attending.
Wow.
It was considered a serious offense to even like talk about what went on during the ceremony.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened? How did this women-only festival turn into like a major scandal for Caesar?
Well, there was this young nobleman named Clodius. He was, known for his, let's say, scandalous behavior.
Okay.
And he disguised himself as a woman to sneak into the festival,
Oh, no.
which was being held at Pompeia's house.
Wait, so he snuck into this like sacred ceremony dressed as a woman?
He did, yeah.
Wow, I can only imagine the uproar.
Oh yeah, it was huge. I mean, he was eventually discovered, of course,
Right.
and this massive scandal erupted.
Wow.
And even though, there was no evidence to suggest that Pompeo was, involved in this,
Right.
Caesar still divorced her.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
With that famous line, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion.
What a statement.
Right.
Like Caesar knew how important public perception was, right?
Absolutely.
Like maintaining that spotless image, even if it meant like sacrificing a marriage.
It really does reveal, I think, a lot about his character. This need to control his sensitivity to, public opinion.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little touch paranoia,
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating how this personal drama played out on such a public stage.
Right. And like everybody in Rome seemingly had an opinion on it.
They did, yeah.
It must have been like the talk of the town.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's like something out of Shakespeare, right?
It really is.
This whole like personal life clashing with public image.
Yeah.
But speaking of drama, we can't forget Caesar's most famous relationship, right?
Of course.
The one that's like inspired countless books and movies and plays.
Right.
His affair with Cleopatra.
Ah, Cleopatra.
The Queen of Egypt.
Now, there was a woman who understood the power of spectacle,
Oh, yeah.
a master of presentation, of strategy.
I mean, the image of her being smuggled into Caesar's presence, like rolled up in a carpet, it's iconic.
It's legendary.
But what's so interesting is that, the Southern makes this point that it wasn't some like secret affair.
Yeah.
Like Caesar practically flaunted his connection with Cleopatra.
Yeah, he brought her to Rome.
He did.
Which must have been, I mean, can you imagine?
I can't even imagine.
The shockwaves through Roman society.
What did Romans think about this?
I mean, it was definitely controversial,
Right.
Some people saw her as this threat to Roman values and traditions.
Right.
But others were just fascinated by this, exotic queen.
Right. And she was a queen in her own right.
Oh, absolutely. And so beyond just the public spectacle,
Right.
this relationship had real political consequences.
In what way?
Well, Cleopatra, she wasn't just a pretty face.
Right.
She was a very, very shrewd political operator.
Right.
She needed Caesar's military backing to secure her own throne in Egypt. And, Caesar saw Egypt as this really strategically important region for Rome.
So, I mean, it was a mutually beneficial alliance, at least at first, right?
Exactly.
And, of course, they had a son together.
They did, yeah, Caesarion.
You're right.
And while Caesar never officially recognized him under Roman law,
Right.
he did show, real affection for both Cleopatra and their son.
Right.
Which, of course, added another layer of complexity to his already complicated personal life.
It really makes you wonder what his wife at the time, Calpurnia,
Right.
like what she thought of all this.
I know.
She was still like in the picture during this very public affair.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the sources don't really give us much on Calpurnia's feelings.
Right.
But we do know that she, remained loyal to Caesar.
She did.
Even warning him, about going to the Senate on the day he was assassinated.
Oh, wow.
Some historians even think that she might have had, a premonition.
Really?
Of the danger. Yeah.
It's almost like tragic, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like despite all the intrigue and all the drama around his love life,
Yeah.
Caesar died, not on a battlefield or in some political struggle, but like through this conspiracy
Right.
hatched in the very halls of power that he like navigated so well.
It's true, yeah. And that actually brings us to another aspect of Caesar's life that often gets overshadowed by, all these romantic escapades.
Okay.
And it's the sources that suggest he also had relationships with men.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Southern talks about this too.
Okay.
Specifically, the rumors about him and King Nicomedes of Bithynia.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, we often look back at historical figures through like a modern lens when it comes to sexuality.
We do, yeah.
So can you tell us like a bit about Roman attitudes towards same-sex relationships?
Absolutely. So, while same-sex relationships were, not uncommon in Roman society,
Okay.
there were definitely these like very distinct social norms around them. The focus was really on the active versus passive role in these relationships.
Oh, good.
And the person who took the, passive role was often subject to ridicule, seen as less masculine.
So it's like even back then, there were all these like societal judgments and power dynamics.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so.
And in Caesar's case, he was often mocked for, allegedly taking the passive role
Right.
in his relationship with Nicomedes.
Yeah.
And this was something his political enemies definitely used against him.
Oh, for sure. But it's interesting because Caesar himself didn't seem too bothered by it.
It's like he was almost like a Teflon politician. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Like scandals that would ruin other people
Yeah.
just seemed to like not stick to him.
It's really remarkable, and I think it just speaks to his self-belief, and his singular focus on his goals.
Mhm.
He's just a man who seemed to, operate on a different plane than everybody else.
He was willing to defy conventions, break norms, and, in the end, he reshaped the course of Roman history.
Yeah.
His boldness, I think, both in his personal life and his political life, was just this defining characteristic.
So, I mean, was Caesar just a man who lived life on his own terms,
Right.
Or was there like a darker side to this ambition?
Yeah.
Was he this like manipulative mastermind who used like everyone around him, including the women in his life, as pawns in his game of power?
That's the question that keeps, fascinating historians and
Okay.
anyone who studies Caesar.
Yeah.
It's impossible to really separate the man from the myth,
Right.
the personal from the political.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a complex figure,
Yeah.
capable of great love and immense cruelty,
Yeah.
strategic brilliance and just this ruthless ambition.
And it's this complexity, right? This
It is.
tapestry of contradictions that I
Exactly
think
right.
just makes him such an enduring figure.
It does. Like he embodies like the full spectrum of human nature.
Sure does.
The good, the bad,
Yeah.
the triumphs and the flaws.
Exactly.
I mean, it's no wonder that, he still captures our imaginations centuries after his death.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like mind-boggling when you really think about it.
Yeah.
The sheer like scope of Caesar's life, right?
Right.
The wars, the reforms, the loves, it's also like grand, so epic.
He definitely lived a life that, most of us can only dream of, right?
Yeah.
And it's remarkable how all these, seemingly different parts of him, the
Yeah.
military genius, the political skills, even the romantic entanglements, it all comes together to tell this like cohesive story.
It's like every part of his life, even the personal dramas,
Right.
they all played a part in shaping his destiny and, ultimately the destiny of Rome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings us back to that question we started with, right? Was Caesar just this master manipulator,
Yeah.
using every relationship to his advantage?
Right.
Or was there like genuine affection there too?
Yeah, and it's something that historians are still like debating today.
They are, yeah.
Some say he was just like a cold, calculating pragmatist.
Right.
Others, they see like hints of genuine affection,
Yeah.
especially for Calpurnia.
It makes you think, like how much did these relationships actually shape his actions, his
Yeah.
decisions as a leader?
Right.
I mean, did his love for Cleopatra, did that influence his policies towards Egypt?
Right.
Did his marriages, both the good and the bad ones, teach him something about power and alliances?
Yeah.
These are all really interesting questions to think about.
They are, and it seems like we can't ever really know like what was truly going on in Caesar's heart,
No.
But I think by looking at the historical evidence,
Hmm.
we can at least try to understand the man behind the legend.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's what's so great about history, right?
Yeah.
It challenges us to really engage with these complex figures to
Right.
try and figure out what motivated them
Good.
and to just remember that even the most famous people were, in the end just human
Right.
with all the same flaws and contradictions.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that history is not just like dates and battles and names, right?
Yeah.
It's about people. It's
Yeah.
about their relationships
For sure.
and the choices that they made that really shaped the world we live in today.
Absolutely. And in Caesar's case, those choices still echo through the centuries. I mean, this
Mhm.
is a man who dared to dream big,
Yeah.
to defy expectations, to really leave his mark on history.
So from strategic affairs to maybe genuine affection. I mean,
Mhm.
Caesar's life was as complex and fascinating
Yeah.
as his military and political achievement.
It really was,
He was a man of contradiction,
for sure.
a brilliant general,
Mm,
but also this ruthless conqueror,
right.
loyal friend, but also a cunning, manipulator,
Yeah.
a passionate lover, and sometimes a cold-hearted pragmatist.
Yeah, he was all of those things.
And it's this complexity that makes him such a captivating figure.
It does.
He's someone who continues to fascinate
Yeah.
us, all these centuries later.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Was he a charming rogue or a power-hungry, manipulator or maybe a little bit of both?
Right.
We'd love to know what you think. Share your thoughts with us on social media, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of fascinating historical figures.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Until next time.